Officer Brandon Tatum is a former Tucson police officer turned political commentator that rose to fame via social media during the 2016 election. Officer Tatum is known for his successful YouTube channel and the founding of Blexit, an organization that encourages Black Americans to leave the Democratic Party. On April 20th, 2022, Officer Tatum came to a Turning Point event at NC State to share his message with NC State students. Officer Tatum was kind enough to sit down with the Free Pack to answer some of my questions. I'd like to thank Officer Tatum, his team, my team, and NC State's Turning Point chapter for helping make this happen. All right, let's get into this. I'm Matthew Allen. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Free Pack, NC State's conservative magazine, and today I'm joined by Officer Brandon Tatum. Officer Tatum, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so what brings you to NC State?
Well, I partner with Turning Point on a lot of speaking engagements to go to colleges and universities and speak to the youth, just give them words of encouragement, dispel a lot of the lies that go on at the university, and ultimately I want to give them hope. So this is a Turning Point event. The chapter invited me here, and that's why I'm here.
I gotcha. When you go to these events, do you run into a lot of students that have never heard your message before, and they're like, wow, you really, you kind of changed my opinion on this matter?
Not really, to be honest. I think a lot of students are already conservative. A lot of them already know who I am. And so they're coming to hear a conservative message, but I think there's some uniqueness to me versus other people, right? I mean, everybody that come and speak have a different perspective. I think there's some people that's probably similar to me, but I'm more focused on God. Like when I speak, I talk about God, I talk about my faith, and I do it from that perspective, which is a similar message, but it's from a godly perspective is the way I do it. So I think they're anticipating hearing some of the things that I say, but I think there's always something to gain from hearing people speak.
I got you. So I wanted to sort of talk about your background in policing. I came across you in the summer of 2020 when you were talking a lot about BLM and the policing in the country. Has the general morale for officers you've spoken to improved since the summer of 2020?
No, I think it's actually declined. 2020 set us as a country in law enforcement on the downward spiral because you had BLM just burning down complete cities. I mean, not the whole city, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. They were burning major parts of the city, putting police officers at fear. You do anything that's against a Black man and you're a white cop, I mean, it's scrutinized. And so I think that was a downward trajectory because after 2020, they started really pushing the Defund the Police movement. And then the morale began to degrade, and then it has a residual effect, right? So the 2020 spawned a lot of officers leaving the police department between 2020 and now. Also, the senior officers were retiring, and these young officers don't have a lot of leadership and guidance. And then many people who would normally come into the profession passionate, ready to fight for their country, domestically, they're not participating in the process. So we have seen a matriculation of negative effects from 2020 all the way to today. And I don't see it improving anytime soon, unfortunately.
That's disappointing to hear. Is there an effective way to get through to people that talk about supporting the idea of defunding the police?
Yes and no, right? I mean, you got to understand who you're talking to. Some people are just brainwashed and they don't want to hear nothing you have to say, and they have made defunding the police their God. And so if you challenge that, they'll flip out and cry and lay down on the floor and roll around and protest all day. But there are people who genuinely want to hear a knowledgeable perspective. And I think they gain value from people who were police officers or who are currently police officers, because a lot of people don't understand what defunding the police mean and what it can actually do to policing. Because in good faith, some people may hear defunding the police as reallocating funds to other resources that will help. And that's not really the case, right? That's not what they really are doing, because you can reallocate funds from other places other than the police department, but obviously they're primarily focused on the police department. What it is to demoralize the police and to turn the people against the police in many of these cities. So defunding them, what does it do as a negative effect? Well, first of all, police aren't gonna have the training, and that's what they need. Police need more training, they need more adequate training, more access to diverse situations, so when they have these things happen in the field, in real life, they can better handle it. When you defund them, they don't have that opportunity. They can't pay officers more money. They can't hire more officers. So then you have a deficit of officers on the streets. Just like we saw the gentleman in Michigan, I believe in Grand Rapids, where the officer shot the guy in the back of the head after he tried to steal the taser. That officer should have never been by himself. There should have been officers within a certain, area to where they can respond quickly to him. But when you defund the police, you don't have officers in the field. So therefore, they're put in these compromising situations where they have to use deadly force. And so there's a lot of effects that the actual defunding of police have. And morale is a big one, man. Morale is probably the single most devastating thing you can do to a police department, even outside of losing officers, not having qualified officers. When the ones who are there to work don't want to work anymore, when they're not proactive in policing, because proactive policing is essential to law enforcement, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't want a cop to only respond after something has happened. You want police officers to get these people off the street before something happens.
Yes.
And in this situation where they are demoralized, and I heard this from officers, that I've talked to that actually are on the beat right now. They're saying, look, man, I'm not finna go out and proactive police. I'm not finna go and catch, go after the guy that I see possibly doing a hand-to-hand on the corner, because I don't want to get labeled. I'm not gonna go and put myself in a situation where I have to use force against a black man, because then I'm gonna go to prison for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And therefore that black man or that dude doing hand-to-hand on the corner, or that person that's a suspect that they've been looking for, is now going to go and perpetuate more crime. And that's why we see the crime rates going up all around the country. So if you tell someone those facts and you are able to answer their questions from a law enforcement perspective, like a practical perspective, I think that people can better receive it.
Okay. So one of the things you talk about in your book is improving police training. So I wanted to ask, what is your ideal training regimen across the board for American police?
So I think generally speaking, police are well trained. I think that there are some areas that could be improved and standardized across every police department, if not already on most police departments. Like our police department had incredible training. We did scenario-based training, force-on-force training, which means we had these, they call simunition guns. They use them in the military, where they're like paintball guns, but they're in the shape of a real gun, really, like the actual lowers of rifles. And
okay.
You can shoot people with it, so it's force-on-force. So you know when to shoot and not to shoot, and you can fight back when you're getting shot. It's a whole scenario-based training. And, we have training where we do live fire scenarios where we can actually shoot a gun in a shoot house that has these walls, so you can get used to actually shooting a real gun under pressure. And those training mechanisms have really made our officers on the Tucson Police Department incredibly talented and capable in when situations like this happen. That doesn't happen around the country, right? Some police departments don't have the funding to do any of that training. Another form of training that I think that should be applicable is doing some type of jujitsu, teaching officers how to fight better and how to go ground game and be more confident. Because if officers are not confident in fighting, they resort to taser. And tasers, in my opinion, I didn't even carry a taser when I was a police officer because it was ineffective. It lulls you to sleep on its effectiveness, and then now you're in a battle and you can't fight, you get afraid, you pull a gun. Or now somebody take your taser because you don't have proper taser retention tactics, and then now you have to go resort to the gun. If you have officers who are very talented and confident in fighting, it's a lot less controversial. When they, I guess when you connect with people, and you've seen this. Somebody that know how to fight, they're chill. They chilling. The person is talking and yapping and doing all that. It's like, okay, because if you touch me, it's gonna be, it's gonna go down. So officers having more hand-to-hand combat, jiu-jitsu type training, which costs money, I think that'll really help officers not get in these deadly force situations. Some of these deadly force situations.
You were talking about, the ground game, fighting on the ground. How do you feel about women in the police force?
That's a good question. It's a controversial question because, I'm under the impression that if you qualify, you qualify. I don't care if you're a woman or not. Can you get the job done? Can you fight? Can you pass the PT standards? Are you capable of doing a doggone job? And if you are, I think that you should be able to be a police officer. I don't care if you're a male or a female. However, I do think, like we see all across the country in many aspects, these affirmative action hires, which means that we're going to hire you because you're a woman, because we need more women representation. Now, I'm going to say this, and some people are going to get mad, but police officers are going to know what I'm talking about. A lot of times, it is frightening when some of these women go to a call that you go on, and you know there's going to be violence because they're not capable. They're not physically capable to help you. I've been in fights where female officers are standing there because she can't help me fight this guy, because he's bigger than me. And some of them are afraid. However, there are women who are capable, who will jump in a fight just as well as anybody else, who can shoot. We had a young lady, she was on the SWAT team. She made the SWAT team. Now I go back and look at the SWAT team. I think they have 2 or 3 women on the SWAT team. So there are some capable women. I think if it was up to me, I think we should have one standard right across the board.
Yes.
Male or female, you have to pass the standard. That's how the SWAT team is. We don't say women have to do this, men have to do this. If you can't do what the men, if you can't do this standard, you cannot be a SWAT operator.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of lends itself to military. It's a little controversial in the military as well, with lowering standards.
Right, which I think is wrong.
Do you, in your book, you have some stories from like 4 or 5 officers. Do you keep in touch with them regularly?
Yeah, I know all of them. I say I know 4. I keep in touch with 4 of them regularly all the time. Mm-hmm. The 5th officer, the officer that lives in California, his wife is running for office, and we don't talk often. We follow each other on social media. I wanted to get his perspective simply because he was a little different than us. Officer Hamilton was a little different than us because he was not into politics. He's not on social media and stuff like that. And he's in California, so he's coming from a slightly different perspective. But I'm cool with everybody in the book. Officer Sean Payne in the book, he's the reason I was a police officer. My friend Mason is in the book. He's a police officer in Arizona. We have a few other guys in the book that are tremendous police officers that I think, let me see if all of it. I think at least two of us have retired at this point, but everybody else is still active.
Okay. Do you know if any of the officers in the Tucson Police Department were fired over the vax mandate? Did they have any issues with that?
Yeah. I don't think they actually got to that point that I've heard of, but they were pushing it. The city council were literally pushing that they not go to firing right away, but they were going to be retaliatory towards these police officers. And in the ways of saying, if you're not vaccinated, you can't get a promotion. Mm-hmm. What does that have to do with a freaking promotion? If you're not vaccinated, you can't work overtime. You can't get, you have to pay more for your medical insurance. And then you got the fat officer who can't jump a fence, who's a medical liability, he don't have to do it. But if you're a fit officer on a SWAT team and you don't have the vaccine, they tried to make it punitive and attack people for not having a vaccine. So I know that they attempted to do it. I talked to one of my friends on the police department. He served on a SWAT team with me, and he was saying they was pushing it, but I haven't heard anything yet. And the coward who was the police chief, Chief Magnus in Tucson, he got selected to be the head of Border Patrol by Sleepy Joe Biden.
Sleepy Joe.
So now Chief Cashmere, and I knew Cashmere when I was there, man, he's squared away. Dude could be in the GQ magazine. He was squared away. I'll tell you a story about me and him. First, when I was a rookie, we go in this car, and Cashmere was a lieutenant at the time. And lieutenants are way up the totem pole. They don't normally go to calls for service. They do administrative stuff. So I remember him coming to a call, man, and I was dealing with this guy. I was a rookie. I didn't know what I was doing half of the time. And I remember this kid had this big old, I don't know, piece of his skin was missing right in the middle of his arm. And he started mouthing off at the police. He got up like he wanted to swing at somebody. And I remember Cashmere grabbed his arm and put his thumb in that thing. Ooh. And pushed in and ended up arresting him like that. And I was like, Lieutenant Cashmere is a man. He wasn't taking no prisoners. As a lieutenant in his Class A, boots shining, tie on. And so I respect him, and he's the chief now, and I love that guy.
So he earned it, yeah.
Yeah, he earned it. Some people are jealous of him because he moved up the ranks really well, but I'm very proud that he's the chief there instead of Magnus.
Okay. I'm curious what you think about the midterms, because I see the midterms going 2 ways. Either the Democrats pretend like this COVID nonsense didn't happen, they weren't trying to push vaccine mandates on children and stuff, or the Omega variant comes around, and then we have to shut everything down again and mail-in votes and all that nonsense. What do you think is going to happen in the midterms?
I guess if I knew for a fact, I'd be God. But I think if I had a theory, I don't know what's going to happen. 2 scenarios that I play out, right? I play out the fact that America is way more tired of the bull crap than what we know, right? The everyday person is like, F you guys. The inflation is out of control. Biden don't know where he's at half of the time. This administration has made us less safe. Don't forget about Afghanistan. Don't forget about Hunter Biden. Don't forget about all these other things. Don't forget about what they've done to COVID, all the people that have lost their jobs. All of this, I'm hoping the scenario that I hope that play out is that people don't forget that and they vote these people out of office. And it's this big, crazy red wave like we've never seen before. Now, the alternative is people are dumb sometimes and they are sheepish and they forget and they push propaganda as if this was all Trump's fault. And please don't let Trump back. So if you get any Republicans in, Trump is going to come back. And they push that fear and they release the mandates, right? So during election time, you feel more confident about the direction of the country. And then people will vote in that manner That's what I think that the Democrats are going to try to do. Or I guess a third option would be they're so stupid that they're going to continue to push this stuff and they're going to push themselves right off a cliff because they are doubling down, right? They released the mask mandate for the flights, for the airplanes.
Yeah, airplanes.
But the White House is saying they recommend people still wear masks. They still want it to be in place. You know, you talk about the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Most people who got common sense, which is no such thing as a Don't Say Gay bill, but they have common sense that you shouldn't be talking to kindergarten and third graders about sexual stuff. But the left keeps pushing it. They keep mandating. They get on TV and talk about the LGBTQ plus. Mayor of New York City, Mayor Adams, putting up billboards in Florida telling people to come to New York where they're gay and accepted. They keep pushing this stuff and it's really pushing the average voter out of the way. Now, the third option I'm hoping that they do is they keep pushing this agenda and they're gonna get a backlash like no other, which is what they saw in 2016.
I think the red wave's a lot more likely than the other thing.
I don't know a person that agree with anything that this administration is doing. I don't know a single person. Mm-hmm. I know people that did vote for Trump the second time. They hate Trump or whatever. I mean, they loved him first and they hate him. So I know some people that changed on Trump, but I don't know anybody that think that Joe Biden is doing a good job or this administration is doing anything that's worth voting for.
So BLM leadership has taken some heat recently for using donation money to buy large mansions.
Surprise, surprise.
Do you think this will reduce their level of influence going into 24?
Yeah, I think they burnt out, man. I think everybody knew it was a ruse at the very beginning, but they had so much power and influence and momentum on the backs of dead black men that it was very hard to combat them at the time. But now, you know, you have the one of the co-founders, Patrisse Cullors, she's like the lead. She resigned a while ago because they found out that she was spending millions of dollars on these mansions in all white neighborhoods, mind you. And then, you know, they have been barred from even receiving donations in the state of California and other states across the country because they're not abiding by laws of the nonprofit status in some of these states. And so that is killing them. Patrisse Cullors is killing them. And then they found out they just spent $6 million on a mansion just recently. I mean, my God. And then Michael Brown's family had come out against them saying that they didn't give him any money. George Floyd's family didn't get any money from BLM. Breonna Taylor's family, all these other families, from the things that I've read and researched, they haven't gotten any substantial money from Black Lives Matter.
Wow.
So when you look at that, plus the people who are, I don't know a black person that support Black Lives Matter. I don't know a black person. I know a black person that support the concept that black people matter, but the actual organization, they've pretty much screwed themselves and revealed who they are. And so I think they don't have any leverage. Now, the Democrats are very crafty, right? The Ku Klux Klan was their military arm. They don't have the Black Lives Matter military arm today, which is the modern day Ku Klux Klan for white people. And, you know, in reverse, they still have Antifa. So they haven't deemed them a domestic terrorist group like I think they should. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they don't use that movement to enact violence like they did with BLM.
I gotcha. Well, Officer Tatum, we've kind of run out of time here. Thank you so much for sitting down with the Free Pack. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, my pleasure. And if anybody, you know, interested in my book or podcast or invite me to speak somewhere, you just go to my website, theofficertatum.com. Theofficertatum.com. You just go to any one of the tabs at the top. You can just click one, booking, connect, all of those. It'll tell you exactly where to go, my podcast, and you can get in contact with me that way. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Officer Tatum.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.